I'll cover you.
I'll be safer if you didn't.
Fine, I won't cover you.
All right, you can cover me.
Do you want me to fucking cover you or not?
I need you to cover me.
Fine, I'll cover you.
Oh my god, that scene was amazing.
It's just like, guys, you're in the middle of a gunfight. Just get on with
it. Oh god. So for all of you who don't know what we're covering, because I don't put the title on the podcast episode or in the lower thirds on the video. It's something that I keep hidden. It's a secret.
Hey, no pun intended.
I know why Ray wanted me to watch this movie. If you know, in this movie we have the lovely Claudia Christian, which is from Babylon 5. So,
well, she's been in a lot of things, but Babylon 5 is where science fiction fans will know her from.
Yeah, I know, but it's your cue to kind of like nudge me in the right direction so I can start Babylon 5.
One of these millennia.
Oh my god, this is a classic film. And to be honest with you, I never heard of it before. Ever. And I am surprised why I never heard this about this movie before. Which I'm kind of curious about it, but I enjoyed it. But before we start, let's go through our segments.
Before we don't.
Forget them entirely otherwise.
Define science fiction remnant.
Okay, so in this segment, it basically is an opportunity for our listeners and anyone listening to our show to be on the podcast. And you have two ways of doing this. You could actually reply it on Twitter. And all you got to do for this segment is you have a friend who loves sci-fi, who has not heard of us. How would you describe us to them? And you could do this one or two ways. You could actually tweet at us, and we'll read that in future episodes. Or you can call our voicemail hotline. The number is 1-305-563-6334. And you can just leave a voicemail there. We will actually play that on future episodes. So this actually started, and you probably heard me talk about this in previous episodes, mostly on season 2, where I had been asked, how would we describe what we do? And I have such a great time on the conversations that we have on this podcast that I can't really pinpoint what is it that we do. Like, someone would ask, do you review movies? Well, technically, we don't do that.
Certainly not.
Ray, I'm sure I asked you this before. During season 1. During season 1, you were a listener. Mm-hmm. And I guess what appealed you to listen to us the first time you heard us, and what was your perception back then? I'm sure now your perception is completely different, because it's different when you have a view on the inside.
Yeah,
I'm up to the eyeballs in it. So.
But what was your perception back then, if you can recall it? Your perception of that, and I'll probably ask Gio also his thoughts, because technically he didn't start. He actually was a catalyst for a change in the format, obviously, because I hated that first episode. I
Certainly a
still do.
catalyst.
Everyone hates their first episode. Don't worry about it. It's always the same. The first episode is like you have no idea what you're doing. You're just, pushing it uphill and just don't know
Oh,
what
yes.
the hell's going on. It's like, I'm going to make a podcast. Crap. How do you do that? Google. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, we'll just wing it.
Yeah, which is, I like to think that's what we do, but it's crazy. The even for a format like ours, we do prepare.
We have a format
Um,
besides our segments.
yeah,
We mostly jump.
You better be careful, Captain Chaos. We might reformat you.
Good luck with that.
Many women have tried. They've all failed. I know.
If a woman try and include a man, I doubt that you will be able to.
So it might not be very apparent to the listeners or even you guys the amount of preparation that I do for the show, and the fact that you guys can say we have a format as a joke makes me feel happy because it shows that the kind of preparation that I do for the show, which is my goal, pays off in a way that you guys, although we are never ready to record, you feel ready enough that we can go through the entire episode.
It's like having kids. You're never ready to have kids. You just go and do it.
Yeah, we don't come with a manual either.
Yeah. So going back to the question, I mean, one of the most the definitions that I like the most so far out of all the definitions that I have heard is a definition that describes us as, that group of friends on the way to Comic-Con having that conversation on the road about, that geeky conversation about the topics that they love the most.
Oh yeah, that works for me. Yeah, definitely.
So
I think our podcast probably fits in that sort of space where you don't want anything super serious. Like, you're not looking for a subject expert that is going to sit there and just lecture to you about this is how it is. It's more
We're the opposite. Super not serious.
Yeah, but it's friends who have some area knowledge and other areas that they can draw in, having an interesting conversation about something that you may or may not have heard about before, and in following that conversation gets you interested in the topic rather than you're interested in the topic so you're looking for the conversation. It works around the other way.
yeah, I agree. And one of the things that I actually like about our episodes is because this is a conversational style, I really love the different perspectives. And I actually heard that from listeners on Twitter as well. Well, they would listen to something we might have said on our episode, and they're like, you know what? I never really thought about it that way, in that particular way. And that is the same experience that I have recording this episode, where we have a conversation between the three of us, and we all have a different perspective, and possibly a different comment about one particular unique scene in the IP that we're discussing. And I really love that. I think it's catalyst for a great conversation.
Hey, I didn't actually answer your question.
Oh.
we just went off over here somewhere.
Yeah, that's
Your question was what was my take on the podcast as a listener, and then you just wandered off before you gave me a chance to answer.
Yeah, that's what we do, and that's why you guys
do.
listen to us. So
No, well, my answer to that question, because it was a good question. Yeah, well, it kind of got answered in our discussion in that the way I saw it was two good friends having a discussion about something they were really keen on, but they're not experts in the field, and they sort of pair like it's like an onion. You're sort of paring away the layers, looking down into the topic and into the points. And I do feel, Robert, that in your preparation, you've got a bunch of questions that you ask us or our guest if we have one, and it drives the conversation along and keeps things ticking over really nicely. And I think it's a really good format. I think it's really approachable, it's friendly, it's comfortable, and it draws you in.
Yeah, and that's why I said I feel good, because my whole idea is I want to make it easy. The whole idea is for us to have an easy conversation, and I know, like, if you like have like this rigid format, it makes it, I don't know, in my opinion, it just doesn't work for us. And it makes me feel good that and I like to hear from our guests, our previous guests. I think I feel from previous conversations that this is the case. Um, but I like to, think that everyone experienced this, where it's just an easy conversation. Although I actually prepare the entire day prior to the episode. From the moment that I wake up to the moment that I record,
Oh yeah, he
I'm actually doing
meditates and
things.
everything about it.
I'm sorry.
You meditate, go to the temple and everything before. He cleans his. He doesn't drink or eats anything, fasting, all the stuff.
Getting on his
um,
Zen on.
Gio, I have a different, a slightly different question for you. Since technically you have been in this show from the, let's say, from the get go, um, acknowledging the fact that I still hate the first episode. You came in on the second episode as a guest, and
And it was
then
like a puppy that you get astray, then never get done with it. Like you just keep it
yeah.
in the house, and he still is.
So technically, Giancarlo's had been a host of Science Fiction Remnant since season one, episode 3. And the question that I have for you is, having that,
So I'm still a guest in episode 2.
yeah, episode 2, you're a guest, yeah.
Aw.
Um, my question is, since you've been in it from the get go, what has been your experience? Basically, your I want to say as you travel through these experience where we had no clue what we were doing, and we created this podcast.
We still don't.
Exactly, and and we're going through this journey. Now we're in season 2. What is your perspective on on your specific journey through this? Recording every day through the podcast, and how different we see ourselves from, say, the episode 3 that we recorded. There's a huge difference. Setting aside the obvious, where we now have better equipment, better recording equipment. But like, I'm kind of curious to see your perspective on the journey that you took from that first episode that we recorded all the way to like now on season 2 that we're recording now.
I mean, to me, science fiction remnant have been much more like a safe space too, where I can be myself. I can speak my mind when I feel like I'm heard and considered on what I have to say. You don't
Mhm.
find that. I've noticed that you don't find that very much in society today. People don't want to open up or even listen to each other and consider what they have to offer as thought.
Mhm.
And this is the place. This is my place. It's where I get with friends, where I can be myself, where I can speak my mind with no filters of what I think. Yeah.
For all of you who are not watching the video, Ray just put it in post-its that says, "That's what she said."
Yep, that's my line.
I'm just copying Captain Chaos over there. Geo
I
likes to
guess,
do
I
that.
guess, and you can put that post-it again, but I think it's rubbing off. and I, and I think it's being most of everything. It's been a progressive trip, which
Mhm.
I love the most about this podcast. Is that every episode that we have is just going upwards. We always do better. We always do better coverage of material, and we enjoy it just as much. It's a new adventure every time that we have something new. Uh, it's a bigger adventure when we have something suggested for Ray. I got to say that Ray has some things out of the repertoire that we would not think we actually would remember. There's a couple that were mentioned this past week that I was like, "Holy shit! I watched that so many years ago." And I mean, it's a beautiful thing, really. I think that everybody should experience it one way or another. Not necessarily in a way of a podcast, but anybody can have a podcast with how easy tools are to the access right today. You don't have to have the last frontier equipment to do it. Uh, but I mean, this space have done more for my life than you might think of, and I'm thankful for having this space on this podcast and for being part of it. It's really an honor.
Awesome.
Thank you. It's a case of finding your tribe, and then you feel comfortable because they're your sort of people.
Yeah, that's exactly like it.
And you might feel nervous about that, but you know, I have not physically been in the same space as these two gentlemen here ever. We have never physically been in the same room, and yet we're good friends. You don't have to physically be in contact with a person, like sitting across from them at a table or anything, to become friends. They're real people. They exist. I've never been to America. I've never been out of Australia. But these people exist. They're real, and they're there. And you've just got to take it on faith, and then everything's cool.
Yeah.
So I do thank you, Sci-Fi Remnant, for existing and for making me part of it.
Hey, I've got a description of Science Fiction Remnant that you haven't heard before.
Okay.
Hey, bring it on.
It's the three amigos in space.
Yep, that's what we are.
Nice.
I want to be Dusty Bottoms.
Yeah, if you've seen our logo, if you've seen the video, we're actually three squares floating in a purple nebula in space. So yeah,
which is my favorite color.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if we even talked about this in previous episode, but when
Purple is my favorite color too.
When I was designing this, I wasn't really thinking about the color. I had gone through probably like 20 to 25 designs of how, and this is prior the releasing our episodes, and I came up with a design that today, and I show Gio at the time we were in the same building, and he says like, "Whoa, it's my favorite color." I was like, I wasn't really thinking about it, but cool. So now I'm glad to know that is your favorite color as well, Ray. So that's cool.
just throw that up for a second to share. That's my desktop.
Nice.
Nice.
So demonstrates the purple.
The color of royalty, man.
Of course.
I love how you have all your icons beautifully, neatly organized.
Oh, that's a program called Fences. I need fences in my life. The sheep go everywhere.
Oh, sheep is everywhere on my desktop.
So you guys are gonna freak out then.
Really?
Why?
Let me show you my desktop.
His desktop.
Let me show you my desktop.
Fenceless.
Hold on a second.
Oh, that's it. I
saw there he goes.
Oh, there you go.
So, are you afraid? Many people tell me I'm not normal.
Oh, probably
normal.
Probably open the first folder you open and you get lost.
The thing is that I'm very I keep everything in my documents folder. So worst case scenario, I have
So don't open that folder.
Yeah. So
it's just a wormhole of shit from up there.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next segment.
Oh, we're still doing the segments?
We are science fiction.
Apparently.
This is the Funny Science Fiction Podcast.
We are the Caribbean Science Fiction Network.
We are Monorats.
We are One Accord Level 2 Podcast.
This is Jesse from Sudden But Inevitable and Open Pike Night.
This is Sci-Fi.
And
Literally.
That's what she said. In this segment, I think what Giancarlo's talked about what science fiction remnant and how it feels like a safe space. It's actually in part one of the reasons why I thought about the hashtag this is sci-fi. And you heard me talk about this in many episodes, and um how I wanted a space where I can find um and I can freely talk, no judgment about any sci-fi IP with people that like that IP without having to be in, I always like to call it silos. Um and that's the reason why I thought about creating that hashtag, which I'm very happy with the results right now and how conversation is actually going and fluid. Um, but yeah, I think when Giancarlo was mentioning that, I was just thinking that is also another reason why is the fact that you could freely talk about what you like the most, regardless of the IP. Um, I don't know what have been. I'm not sure if you guys had any chance lately to go through that. Obviously, I am in the hashtag daily. What have been your experience so far?
Yeah, every time I see your status in Discord it says playing Twitter.
Yeah, it seems like I'm always there.
It's like seeing Angelus playing Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah.
Which he is
So,
right now, by the way.
I think he just leaves it on 24/7. It's just permanent now fixture on his desktop.
No, he don't leave it 24/7. He leave it 2077.
Oh, 2077. Right.
So yeah, if you go through that hashtag, you'll find, which is also um, one of the reasons. Like if you're a creator, I wanted to be able to have creators post to that hashtag for that same reason, where me as a fan or any other fan, they would go in there and they would find content, sci-fi content that they can actually go and try out, something new. There's nothing worse than when you finish something and you have that hunger for, um, and I'm
More.
actually speaking to myself because if you are within the specific fandom, or say, it could be Star Trek, it could be Star Wars, doesn't matter, and you run out of content, you're always hunger for more of that content. In my particular case, is a little different because I love sci-fi as a whole. So when I run out of stuff, there's a lot of things, and this movie is an example of one that I have not seen before, and I'm like happy to be able to discover thanks to this hashtag. And we have creators posting different content, sci-fi content, where you can actually go and discover, or you could possibly discover new things, which is what I heard from some of the listeners that have actually followed this hashtag. So I think for me it's a great thing for sci-fi, where we have a venue or a place where we can go and find new things when we run out of sci-fi content to consume. Um,
Which I think
but
we never will run out of.
Exactly. I mean, if we can go as far back as the second century AD to get sci-fi, it's mind blowing to me. But mainly, is what you said. It is a safe space. You know, there shouldn't be any.
There's no
Um,
weird in here.
Well, what I'm talking about is like, some of the negativity that we find in some circles in sci-fi. I have not seen it, and I hope they would not, you know, be part of the This Is Sci-Fi hashtag. I want it to be an all-inclusive hashtag.
Yep.
So I don't know. Have you guys gone through the hashtag lately? And if so, what has been your experience so far on that?
Well, I glanced into it a few times this week. I guess the big news would be that there's a bunch of podcasts that want to get together and create a radio play across all the podcasts, which is sounding like fun. So looking forward to see how that develops.
Interesting.
But I mean, without the hashtag, that could never happen. You've got to have a place where people can discuss these sort of things for it to come up in the first place.
Yeah. And of course, you'll find me posting some of the articles that I find interesting. Like I can point out one that brought me a little joy for a reason I'm going to speak to. But I found an article. The article is from it's actually called Science Alert, the website. And the article's title is Scientists Transformed Pure Water into Metal, and there's footage. And I found the article really interesting. You know me, I like reading stuff about science and stuff that pertains to, that could be the way for certain of the sci-fi titles that we cover. And Adam V commented saying, "Well, not a good idea in my book." And he placed an animated GIF of Terminator 2.
Everybody goes there, don't they?
Yeah. So yeah, it was interesting. So, that's the kind of stuff that you would find on this hashtag, and I think is really cool. So so should we go, Gio? Should we go to the next segment? What do you think? Are you ready?
Yeah.
Are you ready? Are you really ready?
I never, but that's like fun thing about me. I keep on going with emotions.
Okay, here we go.
Shout out.
And on these shout outs, I want to mention first Steve Horizon_Brave. His handle is My Ghost World. And we thank you for your participation and for you commenting on the post that Ray and Robert actually have posted on the Twitter account. We want to hear what you have to say now that you should know what it is about. What do you think about Cyberpunk 2077 Edge Runners and Rebecca, the cutest thing that doesn't end that cute on the show? But I mean,
well, I'm really curious. By now, Steve, you should know our previous episode was Edge Runners. And you did say you're opening up your Netflix and trying to find out what this is all about. So I am really curious to see to hear your thoughts on that Netflix show. Really curious.
I love the show, and I mean now I feel just decrepit every time I try to play Cyberpunk 2077. It's a sad moment every time I open that and it says "Good morning, Night City." I'm like, "Shit, good night."
So you feel me, Gio? You feel me for the first time. It is a sad show.
It is, and I mean, I like when he chromed up, but then I hate it when he put the skeleton Militech at the end. It's like shit. It's like he wants to look like a Gundam. It doesn't look aerodynamic or cool at all. It looks just like it's weird, man. It's a torso moving in a robot. Going ballistic, like.
I was very disappointed that Rebecca got Adam smashed. It was unfortunate.
She got smashed by
Adam. Bad ending would not repeat, 0 stars.
And
by the way, listeners, spoilers about Edge Runners.
You still saying spoilers, man? You still saying spoilers.
Oh God.
It's
Yeah.
gonna be
Doesn't
Adam
the S-
Smasher, no pun intended.
doesn't the S in SFR stand for spoilers?
Spoilers ahead.
And I'm surprised like Adam Smasher didn't get what he deserved in there. But now everybody that plays Cyberpunk understand why we cannot leave that asshole leave when we actually fight him.
Now you have a reason.
Yep. And I mean, besides that, I want to also give a special thanks to SpyHard podcast. Their handle is SpyHard at SpyHards. Joel Montana too. Joel McGinnon from Seldon Crisis podcast. Seldon
Awesome.
Crisis Pod is their handle.
He's
And-
always commenting on he's always engaging our conversation.
and picking our brains in the good way.
Awesome.
Actually, and Cinema Recall, we hope to actually have another show with them too.
Oh yeah. We have to have the burn on our show again.
It's always
his-
fun with him, man.
Yeah.
The
his
burn,
cool.
he always acts like he adds that spice that it's his, his touch.
Yes.
And
Yes.
his handle actually is at cinema_recall. If you guys want to find him, you should find him. Actually, you should stop the show and look for them. Actually,
Great
as I
podcast.
mentioned them. A great podcast. And last but not least, Following Films, and their handle is at Following Films altogether. Thank you so much for always engaging with us in conversations, for retweeting our posts, and for being always picking our brains on new topics, questions that you have about our podcast or any sci-fi elements. For real, we appreciate the support, we appreciate the participation, and that's why we keep the sci-fi hashtag and this sci-fi remnant alive. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and you mentioned Following Films. I just gotta point out that he was on a previous episode called "Safety Not Guarantee" about that
Yes.
movie.
That movie was good, man.
This is one of the things I want to speak about that podcast too. Is it's a great discovery podcast because he covers all that stuff that is usually kind of like sleepers
Or indie.
or mostly indie. Yeah, and there are really interesting conversations about those movies. So if you have not listened to that episode, go listen to episode and go find them. I'm sure that if you are a sci-fi or if you're a film in general, a film fan, you're gonna enjoy that podcast.
For serious. Yeah.
Okay, so
I did it. I made it through my segment, man.
for all of you who are not aware by now, you should if you listen to previous episodes. This is why we called him Captain Chaos.
Yeah.
Typically, especially if you watch the video feed on YouTube, there have been some episodes where you see him flicker like a light bulb.
Yeah, the torch is not working properly.
In, out, in, out, in, out. So
Up and down like the Assyrian bloody empire.
and that's what we
quite
call him
Monty
Captain Chaos, So we're excited that he was able to go through his entire segment without dropping from the feed.
The internet gods are being
Good
kind
internet.
today.
Yeah.
The internet's going to the dark side.
And you guys let us know. We'll make shirts. Captain Chaos, that sounds like a cool idea. His superpower is chaos. So there you go. Are we ready?
All he needs is a lightsaber at the moment, and he's ready for the next Star Wars movie.
He's definitely going to be a Sith.
Oh, for sure.
I don't know. I think we're ready. Are we ready?
Are we out of segments? Are we actually going to do the movie now?
The plot.
Yes.
Oh, let's have a plot.
The
Yeah.
I've
plot.
lost the plot. Where's the plot? I've lost
If you take request, Chinese translation, please.
Oh man,
Oh,
that's a one in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah.
If you missed it, yeah.
You gotta listen to our aliens episode.
Alien. We haven't done aliens yet.
Oh, we gotta
yeah.
do aliens.
It was just a single one.
No.
One fucker that took 45 minutes to take action on a movie. 45 minutes of what's going on. Until somebody got pregnant and had a baby.
So, Gio, I take it you love Alien? Is your favorite movie?
It's a love and hate relationship, man. It's like it's been 30 minutes and you don't know what you're watching, but 15 minutes after you're like, oh, here it is.
It's a slow burn. You gotta accept that the 70s
Slow
didn't have
burn,
this,
man.
lickety split
Slow
stuff.
burn. The slow burn is like a bad belly ache, and finally, it comes out. Literally, it comes out.
Oh my god!
Yeah, but not the normal way through the middle of your
Well,
chest.
it's a bad belly ache, man. It came out somewhere. I think that the guy was relieved.
I think I have a stomach ulcer. No, you got something worse than a stomach ulcer, dude.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my baby. Hello, my. Oh god! You guys listening, if you want to get the full conversation, just go download the episode. It's a lot of fun. We have every time we talk about it, if you can see from other episodes, every time we talk about aliens, we just go on a tangent because it was so much fun.
We're gonna stop being self-referential. It's getting out of hand. Okay, so there was this movie that Robert has never seen. Yeah, it's called The Hidden. It was so well hidden that Robert had never seen it.
I was 17 at the time.
And he was busy watching Jane Fonda.
I kind of feel like it's fair enough too, right? Because if you flipped over, like if this was playing late at night, as a lot of these sort of
obscure shows,
this is a B grade sci-fi, right? But it's a B grade sci-fi that if you flipped over to it on TV anytime between probably 1989 and today, and it came on a streaming service or somebody was watching it and you just watched it for a couple of minutes, you would swear that you were watching a buddy cop movie, right? A serious buddy cop movie. And that's what it looks like on the surface. And I was sort of there watching it again last night, and I was thinking to myself, if you flipped over to this and watched 5 minutes with no context, it's a buddy cop movie. And you wouldn't realize it was sci-fi unless you picked up on the hints, because it's quite subtle, and especially in the first half. And then, you know, it's probably why a lot of people miss this movie as a classic sort of body snatcher sci-fi. It's quite slow burn, and you'd swear it was a buddy cop movie until the guy vomits a space alien slug. Okay, that's when it sort of goes. Okay, left turn at Albuquerque. Now we're getting into the sci-fi. So this movie came out in 1987. It is suggested that the budget was around $5 million, and it made $9.7 million at the box office. So it didn't do a lot of business. Probably because it was so subtle as a sci-fi that everybody thought it was a cop movie, and the people who went to see it as a cop movie discovered it was sci-fi and walked out partway through. So it was one of those movies that was going to confuse the viewing audience, I feel. It was a little too smart for its own good. So therefore you ended up with something that didn't quite go down well with the viewing public. However, I feel that since that time, it's become quite the sleeper classic, in that people who understand what it is can really enjoy it. I've watched it about 6 times, which is quite significant for me. And it almost wasn't deliberate. It's like one of those movies that just comes on and you just start watching it and you keep watching it, because it keeps drawing you in with the little hints until things get explained. You go, oh, that's what's going on. And I like the aha moment. Exactly. I like movies like that where things are happening and you've got to try and work out what's going on. That works for me. It may not work for a lot of the viewing public, but it certainly works well for me. And of course, it's got Claudia Christian in it, who, as we've mentioned, is she Captain Ivanova, I think, from Babylon 5. She's in from season 2 onwards, I think, in Babylon 5, and she's a very central character, being the operations officer on that show. But of course, it also has now what's his name? Is it Chris?
I just
Chris
have to mention.
No, Kyle MacLachlan.
Yeah, Moadib.
Moadib from the original
From the Maracas.
Dune.
Moadib.
A lot of people saw Kyle MacLachlan in Dune and then never saw him again, but he was in this movie.
Hey, he was in How I Met Your Mother. He's the captain.
Yes. But he didn't seem to be in a lot of other things around that time.
Housewives
popped up and then you didn't see a lot of him. But he's in this movie and he does a really good job as sort of a bit quirky, a bit quiet, a bit straightforward FBI agent who turns out to be being possessed by a space alien. Although I don't think he was sluggy. I think he was more like an energy alien, but worked the same way as the sluggy guy. But anyway, plot. Jack DeVries is a quiet citizen with no criminal past, but he robs a Los Angeles Wells Fargo bank in the opening scene of this movie, kills all the security guards inside, and leads the Los Angeles Police Department on a high-speed chase. Now, when I originally saw this movie the first time, it was actually at my college of residence when I was going to uni back in the late 80s. And a friend of mine who was a big sci-fi nut said to me, "Oh, you got to come watch this movie. I've just thrown it on." Of course, on VHS back in the day. So we went into there was this multi-purpose room near the bar in the college. Of course, in Australia, the drinking age is 18, and the age that you go to university is generally 18. So you get to uni and you start drinking. That's what you do in Australia. So this bar, and right next to it was this multi-purpose space which had a large screen TV reprojection with a VHS player. So we'd rent videotapes and chuck them in there and watch them together while having a drink and eating our dinners that we'd cooked in the kitchens over the other side. So we're sitting down to watch this movie, and I walked in. The movie had already started. I'd missed the first 3 minutes, maybe, or 3 or 4 minutes. And here's a guy looking like a 30-something guy with a little bit of stubble, looking quite handsome in that day and age. And he's listening to some heavy metal, driving a black Ferrari through a park. And I'm like, okay, this has got my interest. That's a bit weird. And then he just mows down a guy in a wheelchair. Just and he laughs about it. And I'm like, okay, this guy's a scumbag. And it's like the epitome of 80s car chase cop movie dynamic, right? But there's something weird about this guy. He just like doesn't give a shit about anybody.
And he's fucking up a Ferrari.
Yeah, and you immediately go, he doesn't care about the car, so it's obviously not his. He's stolen it. He's carrying around bags of money. He's like running down people in the street. He's running down cops. He's smashing into everybody. He gets out of the car. They riddle him with bullets, and he's like, hey, I don't care. And then the car explodes. That's the thing that knocks him over. And you're sort of like, okay, fine. The guy's like tough as nails and a complete psycho. Right. How is this sci-fi? I was told it was sci-fi. So immediately, like, my interest is piqued because like this isn't working like the normal cop show would, normal cop movie.
Cops are not winning.
No, do they ever? but anyway, this is the movies, it's not real life. The chase. So back to the plot. The chase ends when DeVries encounters a police blockade overseen by Detective Thomas Beck. DeVries is shot several times, smashes through the blockade, and crashes the Ferrari he is driving. DeVries is taken to the hospital where the doctor informs Beck that his partner, Detective Cliff Willis, and that DeVries is not expected to survive the night. Upon his return to the LAPD headquarters, Beck and his supervisor, Lieutenant John Masterson, meets FBI Special Agent Lloyd Gallagher, played by Mordib, who informs them that Beck has been assigned to work with Gallagher to track down DeVries. When told of DeVries' condition, Gallagher rushes off to the hospital. Meanwhile, at the hospital, and this is the scene that tells you it's sci-fi, DeVries suddenly awakens, and he's like all burnt and everything from the explosion, but he just wakes up. Disconnecting his life support equipment, he approaches the comatose man in the next bed, Jonathan P. Miller. After DeVries forces Miller's mouth open, a slug-like alien emerges from DeVries' mouth and transfers itself into Miller's body. Gallagher arrives to find DeVries dead on the floor and Miller's bed abandoned. Gallagher tells Beck to put out an alert on Miller, but Beck refuses because Miller has no criminal record. I think the quote was, I don't do parking tickets, overdue parking tickets. So that's all the guy had on his record. Miller goes to a record store. That's the guy that the alien is in now. He goes to a record store where he beats the store owner to death. He then goes to, he steals CDs and a boombox. Hopefully you know what. Sorry, CDs, but I say cassettes. I got to go back further, wind it back a bit further. He then goes to a car dealership. He then goes to a car dealership where he kills 3 men and steals a red Ferrari. He then visits a strip club where the alien leaves Miller's body and takes over the body of a stripper named Brenda. Now, why he changes bodies is because the guy he'd taken over in the hospital had a bad heart condition and really bad digestive conditions and was on the brink of death. So the body he'd taken over was pretty much dead, and it was actually bleeding to death while he was wandering around in it. So he had to change bodies fairly quickly. So he picked Claudia Christian, who wouldn't. It was a very interesting scene in the strip club. We got some information on that later. I believe Robert has an anecdote. So he takes over Brenda. Gallagher asked police to track Brenda when he sees her picture next to Miller's body. Brenda is then propositioned by a catcaller. She accepts and follows him to his car. They proceed to have vehicular sex. That's a thing, vehicular sex, in a parking lot, which results in the catcaller's death.
That was mortal sex.
She F's him to death.
Yeah, I was wondering what's up with that. I mean, how did he die?
Whoa, that was some deadly night.
There might have been some auto asphyxiation going on there, and if you don't know what that is, go and Google it.
That's a key. BDSM and shit.
Or don't.
Or don't. Yes, don't if you're under 18. Put it that way. Oh man, I got pop-ups popping up over my plot. Go away. She then takes his car, which she wasn't very impressed with because it was a sedan. Gallagher and Beck pursue her to a rooftop where they mortally wound her in a gun battle. As Brenda dies, Gallagher points a strangely shaped alien weapon at her. However, she leaps off the roof. As Masterson arrives from his house to take charge of the scene, the alien transfers itself from Brenda's dying body into Masterson's dog. Why he brought his dog to a crime scene, I do not know, but there you have it.
It's a canine.
I don't think he was part of the canine unit, not the right breed. Frustrated by Gallagher's continuing refusal to explain the strange phenomenon of ordinary citizens turning into crazed killers, Beck arrests him and puts him in a jail cell. Beck soon learns that Gallagher is an imposter impersonating the real Agent Gallagher, who is dead. When Beck confronts Gallagher with this information, Gallagher tells him that Gallagher is an extraterrestrial lawman and that they are in fact pursuing an alien thrill killer who has the ability to take over human bodies. Beck dismisses the story as insane and leaves Gallagher incarcerated in a jail cell at the police station. Beck at Masterson's back at Masterson's house. The alien leaves the dog's body and enters Masterson. That was amazing. The dog jumps through the window because it's been tied up outside. Leaps
That
through
dog
the window and
That dog had no
slams.
power to do that.
And it's it was candy glass that the dog could do. and slams this big heavy set guy into his refrigerator door, knocking him out.
Wow.
I guess that's the power of an alien slug inside a dog. But anyway. In the morning, Masterson goes to the police station and seizes a number of weapons, sparking a shootout between himself and the station's police officers as he attempts to track down Gallagher. It's all in inverted commas here, so I've got to start doing this. Convinced of Gallagher's story due to Masterson's immunity to excessive bullet wounds, Beck releases him from the cell and the two confront Masterson. During the resulting shootout, Masterson confirms that Gallagher is an alien law enforcer named Alerg. I think that's how you pronounce it. Sounds like something caught in your throat. Alerg.
Gallagher backwards.
Alerg. Who has been pursuing the alien ever since it murdered his family and his partner on another planet. When Alerg first came to Earth, he inhabited the body of Robert Stone, a park ranger, then assumed the identity of Lloyd Gallagher after the real Gallagher was killed in a fire. Though Beck manages to stop Masterson, Alerg Gallagher reveals that his weapon cannot kill the alien when it is inside a human body, as a weapon does not work on human flesh, thus requiring him to be present when the slug thingy is transferring hosts. They are unable to stop the alien from abandoning Masterson's body for that of Beck's partner, Willis, who then escapes the station. And it was that whole, oh no, not Willis, sort of situation. Using Willis's credentials, the alien tries to gain access to Senator Holt, a likely presidential candidate, at a hotel where the senator is staying, where, the LAPD group are in charge of security. Alerg Gallagher and Beck follow Willis, and a shootout ensues between Beck and Willis, during which Beck is severely wounded. As Willis, the alien corners Senator Holt and enters his body before Alerg Gallagher can stop him. Holt then calls a press conference and announces his candidacy for presidency. Alerg Gallagher is forced to attack Holt in the middle of a press conference, though shot several times by police and the senator's bodyguards. Alerg Gallagher is able to get close enough to use a flamethrower on Holt. As the alien emerges from Holt's charred body, shocking everybody, before collapsing, Alerg Gallagher kills it with his sci-fi weapon. Taken to hospital where Beck is being treated, Alerg Gallagher discovers that Beck is close to death. Witnessing the emotional suffering of Beck's wife and daughter, Alerg Gallagher transfers his life force from Gallagher to Beck as Beck dies. When she sees her miraculously recovered father, Beck's daughter initially hesitates when he reaches out to her, but then smiles and takes his hand. Roll credits. So that's why I kind of said Robert mightn't like the end of this movie, because the bad guy gets his comeuppance, but one of the good guys dies, and the other good guy has to pretend to be the other good guy to help the family.
And that I question myself on this one, because it's possible that in the written story used for this film, we didn't have enough what's the word that I'm looking for? Like development story to get attached. I didn't feel I was particularly attached to Beck. And it made me question myself after that ending, because I felt like everything was right, although he was a father, he was a husband, and he died with a little girl. Or maybe that also speaks to the writing in a way, because the alien took over his body and technically didn't leave the family without without a father, without a husband. But if I think about it in the other way, I always wondered, it is obvious that it's not him. We know that he doesn't act like a normal human does. So it's going to take a day for the family to find out, which we don't get to see. There's actually a part 2 out there, which I'm kind of curious to
Is it?
watch. Yeah, there's a part 2.
That I didn't know.
And I want to watch it only because I have those questions. But to me, it would only take a day for them to find out this is not Beck. Because
he might try and pass it off as, I was badly injured and it affected my brain, kind of thing.
Yeah. And also, what's up with the daughter? It is obvious something, and actually, that's another reason why I want to watch part 2. There is, they never really explained the way that she looks at him earlier on the film and also in the end, which in the end it gives me a lot of more questions to that. But it's obvious that she either knows or feels that there's something not quite right about Gallagher. And also that creepy back and forward look when he goes into the little girl's, room when the parents are putting her to bed, and the mother said, hey, say goodnight to the nice gentleman, the nice guy Gallagher, and they just look at each other. That was a little creepy to me.
She knows what's going on.
Well, I can explain that. Because I've seen this movie 6 times now. It's kind of obvious to me now. It's not obvious on the first watch necessarily. So at another point in the story, Gallagher tells Beck, once he's admitted that he's not human, that he's an alien law enforcement officer, he tells Beck that this guy killed his partner and his wife and his child. And then once you hear that, and that's after he visits Beck's house, it clicked to me that he was looking at the wife and the child thinking about what he'd lost. He'd lost his wife and his child, and how he was missing them. And this is why he was chasing this guy down, chasing the slug thrill killer down, was to get revenge. It was actually a revenge story, because when he tells when Gallagher tells Beck that this guy killed his partner, he's like, oh, I'm surprised you're allowed to stay on the case. The FBI don't usually allow that, because it's basically becomes revenge, and you're more likely to kill the perp than apprehend them, which doesn't bode well. So there's that. But he also lost his family, and then he goes and visits Beck's house and sees Beck's family and how happy they are, and that sort of thing. And he misses his family, and that's what all the staring's about. He's sort of looking at the wife and the child. She's reading the book to the daughter, and the husband comes in, and they're all sort of lovey-dovey and together and all that sort of stuff. And it's obviously a bit creepy because he's not human; he's an alien, but there's still, he recognizes that familial bond, and that's what he's lost. So you can sort of, once you realize that he is an alien as well, then you can understand what he's doing there with the whole staring thing. But I also think that, they often say that children are more aware of the unusual because they're not so steeped in, they haven't lived all these years in society and have all these preconceived notions. They see things for what they really are. So I suspect that she recognizes that Gallagher is not a normal person. She can see that he's different, like immediately, like straight away. And then she sees that same thing at the very end, but she ends up overcoming that because it's her father. But I mean, it could be very interesting how that progresses. Like she might say, "I know who you are" to her father. That's not her father anymore because he's died, and the alien, what was his name? Alur or something? Some weird sort of not name. Alurg. That Alurg is in her father, and he did that because he succeeded in his mission. He got his revenge, and he felt sorry for the wife and child because he'd lost his wife and child, and they've lost the father/husband. And then he felt that the best thing he could do now, because he's probably trapped on Earth, he can't get away from Earth now. He's probably stuck there. That he would just spend the rest of his life playing the father for this family and being a police officer on Earth, to take the place of the man that he came to respect, which was Beck. To honor his memory, kind of thing. He would take the man's place and do that for that family. I suspect that was what the idea was at the end of the movie.
Yeah, I was just thinking, and that's the reason why I'm like very appealed to watch part 2, because I'm not sure if they'll cover some of that stuff, and just like a little quick synopsis, about Hidden 2 is the alien criminal from the first movie is dead, but he left a few eggs which are hatching now. The good alien who still inhabit Tom Beck's body has been waiting just in case this happens. Unfortunately, his presence in the body has taken a terrible toll on it, draining him of his life energy. Additional relationship with Beck's daughter, Juliet, now a cop, has deteriorated. Let's see. Where I kind of lost where I was. But when the killing starts again, they will need to work together to stop the new generation of aliens. So I wonder if they're going to explore a little bit of this question in part 2, and that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to watch that part 2. But yeah, I was watching. It makes sense what you said. Kids are more aware.
Perceptive.
Yeah. So that would actually make sense.
I see dead people.
Yeah. But yeah, this movie, granted, I went in with a preconception that this was a sci-fi movie. But I share your thoughts. If you start watching this movie, you think this is a cop movie from the 80s. From the very beginning, it starts with a video feed of a bank robbery. And where I started questioning...
It is like a continuation of They Leave, right?
Yeah. So I think if you go without the conception that this is a sci-fi movie, you start questioning yourself after that chase scene ends at the very beginning, where the Ferrari, was it a Ferrari or Lamborghini?
He was a Ferrari addict.
Ferraris, only
It was a Ferrari. So he's coming straight through to a police blockade. That's like a couple of cars blocking the road. And as soon as he's in sight, every cop in the area shoots at the car, and it shoots him up big time. And the car, you can see how it turns aside and crashes against it was a fence, a metal fence on the side. And I'm thinking, okay, that's it, And then you see that door open and the guy walked out, and it's like, hold up a second. There's just no way. And you see the guy walking, all bloodied up. And that's when that's what you would actually start questioning. It's like, okay, something is not right here. This is not an 80s movie because an 80 cop movie because
They just don't work out.
he's just not going to walk out of that one.
Oh, clearly he was on PCP and was feeling no pain. Just like the Terminator.
Oh, wow. Gio, this is your first time watching this movie too, right?
Yeah.
Where do you think would be the point in the movie where you start questioning, that this is not a body cop, cop / 80s movie?
I mean, if you're observing enough and you see their body language and movement, you can notice there's something up from the get-go. Because you just don't see a criminal going on a spree behaving like this. You will see some frenetic behavior or something human, but there's something not human about it. They made sure, and that was good acting, that they made sure to project this into the character. When they were going on a spree, it was not a human. And you can see it for the way that they move, the way that they act. It's not just human, they look kind of uh, like lack of emotion on it. More, I won't say robotic, but certainly there was no emotion or that human factor in condition on their acting. So they did good acting when I say that you can observe and you can notice, like, okay, if you observe enough, you don't have to wait till the slimy things come out to realize something is up that is strange with a person in that aspect. Like, it's like they are inanimated inside. It's like the little light go off inside. They made sure to actually project that pretty well on the acting, where when you see them robbing or attacking others, like, it's like they're not feeling much inside. A human being would show something, even if it's madness, but not even that.
I think I saw that a little bit more accentuated in Lloyd Gallagher. He was just not normal.
No,
And
it's
I
like
think
it's like the little light inside is off completely. It's like it's gone inside. Like, this is an empty shell moving. You know.
yeah, what was that scene where he said, "Doesn't anyone say please anymore?" And Lloyd Gallagher says, "Please." And then he says, "How can I refuse?" He says, "You can't." But it's just that I think it speaks to his acting. And obviously, we know this is a great actor from the movie like Dune and other movies that we've seen from him. But we could see this where he has this unhuman behavior in his mannerisms and in the way that he speaks.
Yeah.
And I think in that particular scene makes it a little bit more
Freaky.
comedic to listen to watch because of that reaction.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely Gio's and my first time watching this movie. It is a little too dark for my taste. As you know, I don't like dark stuff, and I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate when I say this. And that's the reason why I don't like Batman.
How could you? Hot take. Mic drop.
And just to vindicate myself, I like what I like to call the original Batman. And Gio, I think you kind of feel better after I say that, right? Because everybody seems to like that original 80s Batman. So because I remember the first time that I told you I don't like Batman, he was like, "Oh, it's the gloves are off." And then when I mentioned that one, with Michael Keaton, and it's like, okay, everything is fine now.
Many people actually don't like Michael Keaton that much, and I mean, to me, he's one of the best.
Yeah. So for me, Michael Keaton is Batman.
I thought you'd be going for Adam West. That's more your style.
Oh yeah, I love Adam
that's
West.
his style.
I love Adam West.
Robert is Adam West all the way. For Robert, I think that he's more like trying to like, okay, I'm gonna sit a little bit more on your side with Michael Keaton, but if you ask him, you put me out of the picture, he's Adam West.
Da 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 pow pow.
Holly free Holly's Batman.
Oh my god. Yeah, I love Adam West. You got me. Sorry.
Picked it.
But think about it, like, I mean, Adam West comes from also an era where comics were trying to lighten up and target a more young public compared to like when Michael Keaton and all these Batmans come up are more for adult for an adult audience. It's a more obscure version of Batman. It's not so sugar coated, you know.
Yeah, Batman has always been dark.
Yeah.
And I think the producers, when they created the Adam West version, they wanted to create something where they can make it friendly for everyone.
Yeah,
and as you know, when you create something like that, it has greater potential to make more money because you're opening it to a lot more audience. And I honestly think that when they created Michael Keaton's version of Batman, they wanted to bring it back.
Yeah.
Because if you notice, Michael Keaton is
Adam West is like
Adam
the
West.
Nintendo version of Batman.
Exactly. So, although I agree, Michael Keaton's is not the original comics interpretation of Batman, it is a step in the right direction from Adam West.
Yeah.
And then everything after that, it got a little bit more serious until what we have now is closer to what the comics from the old time and even now are supposed to be. So, but that's just my thought on that. But the reason why I brought that up is this is that, in my opinion, and guys, let me know what your perception is. In my opinion, this movie was dark. In its subject matter, in its visuals, and it reminded me a lot of what that typical Batman should be. The typical story of Batman should be very dark in story and in visuals.
No real happy ending.
Yeah.
It wasn't as dark as something like RoboCop.
No.
Or that ilk. I think they were really going for the 80s cop aesthetic, you know, the cop drama aesthetic. And it's like I said earlier, if you flicked over to this in late night TV and watched it not carefully, but just had it going on in the background for a couple of minutes, you would swear it was an 80s cop drama. You would swear it was. And that's what they were going for.
I can tell you one thing that I actually read I think it was this morning when I was preparing for this. I'm not familiar with Sidney Lumet's crime films at all. I would have to kind of research and see. But I heard the director Jack Shoulder was inspired by his crime films when he created the cop scenes in this movie. So I'm kind of wondering, and I'm gonna look at Sidney's filmography to see what kind of films. But this was inspired, which to be honest with you, I love sci-fi so much that I love when they do stuff like that, when they do the major crossovers with sci-fi and something else. This is a crossover where you have sci-fi crossed with a body cop from the 80s type. And I have to specify 80s because if you do a sci-fi body cop from now, 2022, I expect it would look a lot different than what this movie.
More like Total Recall.
Yeah, kind of like that.
To paraphrase OCP, sci-fi is where you find it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So yeah, that's what I meant. But um, I like the movie. And going back to what Ray said, it make this movie made me question, because in theory, I shouldn't like this ending. In theory, we have a family that lost his dad, his husband. Um,
But you
and
get
I
a
was
redemptive you get a redemptive element when he decides to stay to fulfill the role, of the father and the husband.
maybe that's what it was. Um,
So that's like your band aid.
I think I was kind of bending it because it's obvious they're going to find out very soon. I think, and you have a point, Ray, when you mentioned that he can play the card that he was in a really bad um, space. It did. If you notice, when the wife walked out crying, they didn't say it, but I can assume that they were telling her he was not going to last long.
Yeah, I got the whole
Yeah.
say your goodbyes vibe from the
I
scene.
mean, I mean that's what she said. He was not gonna last long.
So, uh, so I think if someone could, aside from your parents, I think even more so than your parents,
It
if
will be messed up if
someone,
my parents know I won't last long.
if someone, if someone will know who you are immediately, that would be your spouse. And I think more so than your parents, because
She knows
you
how long
have
you last.
you have an you have you have a type of intimacy with this person that you just don't have with your parents. And on top of that, you live with them, a lot. Well, I wouldn't say a lot longer than your parents, but um that
Depending on
intimacy.
how long you stay married, yeah.
Exactly. So, but what I'm saying is, you have a longer period of time with this person on a daily basis, not
Yeah.
necessarily a combined time, because obviously your parents are going to win there. But on top of the intimacy that you have with this person, you have that longer uh, time, period of time on a daily basis with this person. So you could actually pick up on their habits and mannerisms, the way they speak, their speech, their ticks.
Yep.
So for me, when that happened, I was like, she's extremely grateful, because this, from her point of view, from the doctor's point of view, was a miracle, where he was about to die. And he actually did die a few minutes after she walked out. But for them, they don't know this part. This is a miracle. So, granted, for the entire day, she's going to overlook everything that she sees. But eventually, I would say, starting probably in the next day or after he gets home, um, things are going to start being manifesting, and she's going to start picking up on things that
But it's what Ray said too. Like, they could look at it like some brain damage or some sequel of the damage, and you don't know. You know what we're capable of. Self deceit when we don't want to accept a reality too.
yeah.
So I mean, we're willing to believe whatever just for not accepting a crude reality.
And that's what I think would happen partly on her, because she is not, it's like you don't want to look at a gifted horse in the mouth, basically. So she's thankful that the husband is back home, that he's not dead, and she's going to force herself to overlook whatever may come, because she's grateful.
Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah. So I don't know. What do you think, Ray? I mean, I was thinking about that scene. And I was like, you know, this is eventually going to cut. It, it's one of those things that, when they say you try not to be what someone else's wants you to be. just to have him around. This is eventually, in my mind, is going to catch up eventually, because there's going to be a point where she's going to get tired. This is not the person she married. This is not the person that she's used to dealing with on a daily basis. And she's going to put up with things day after day, and eventually it's going to catch up. And that's where I'm going to, is somewhere in the future, not necessarily the immediate future.
Well, we don't know how good an actor Allerg is. He was being obviously not quite human while he was running around inside of Gallagher. Well, Gallagher in inverted commas, because it wasn't even Gallagher. It was another guy, Stone, who was the park ranger whose body he took over when he crash landed on Earth. But he had spent a fair amount of time with this guy in the days before the final shootout, and maybe now he's not busy chasing an alien thrill killer. He's got time to improve his acting, like act more like Beck. So, I mean, he might have been able to cover for a bit of it by saying, I was badly injured and it's changed the way I think about things. But it obviously the daughter's sus about the whole thing, straight up. So there's going to be a bit of distance growing between them. Who knows? You might start drinking and say that it's alcohol related.
Yeah,
that happens regularly. People's whole personalities can change when they get addicted to alcohol. So it could be something like he pulls I got badly wounded and I've changed my thinking about my life after that happened, and got drunk trying to deal with it and became a drunkard, and that's why I'm different. There's lots of ways to sort of work your way around it if you're smart and manipulative, which I guess he would have to be as a not so much a shape changer, but a creature that possesses other sentient creatures to
The other question is like, what access do they have to their brains, which giving access to experiences and quirks and personality traits that they could actually impersonate.
Yeah, they never really explored this, because
Yeah,
if that's the case, he would
he could actually harness that and really play it off.
because he was occupying the body from the FBI agent, but it wasn't really explored if he had any recollection of his past life. Yeah.
Well, the body that he was occupying was not an FBI agent; it was a park ranger who was pretending to be an FBI agent.
Oh, okay.
So that's could be why he wasn't doing a particularly good job at seeming human. But he was friends with Beck, and maybe what's left of Beck's brain, he can communicate with it, and they would be willing to work together. And then he could access Beck's memories and be able to then play Beck better than
this is deeper than what we might think of, because this could actually tap into metaphysics of the element of the soul. Like are we just a body, and whoever I am and think I am beyond this physical plane actually just stuck in this brain? So if I die and something takes over it, Giancarlo can continue, and you might not know it. I might be actually a slime right now talking on this podcast.
I don't.
Explains a lot. Explains a lot.
Let's do the show.
I think that, and this is just my personal opinion, I think that the essence of who we are.
Please, Robert.
When we leave these containers, we do not leave anything behind.
Or we're just mid popsicles.
Yeah, we're mid popsicles. Yeah. I think if I think about this, and again, this is just my specific thought. the essence that make who we are leaves the moment that we died. So in this particular scene at the end of this movie, there wouldn't be anything left for Lloyd to read on that brain that would help him going in in the future as to what
Mhm.
Beck was like. And but that's just my particular thought.
I doubt that. So how memories are stored is basically how the brain the neurons are arranged and their chemical states is how memories are stored in neurons. So if that hasn't broken down yet, and it obviously hasn't because he jumps in there pretty quick smart before the brains or before the bodies started to fall to pieces, kind of deal. But he wouldn't be able to take over a body that was completely dead. Obviously, the guy's dying. I don't know how souls work as any
we never do.
There's no way to measure it, but maybe the soul's already fled the body, and he could still jump in there, and the brain would be still functional because he's obviously taken over the body, got it going again, and is able to inhabit it. So, whereas Beck's soul might have passed on, Beck's memories could still be in there because the brain hasn't broken down yet. So there's apparently a time period they believe before disassociation of the neurons occurs, and it's no longer possible to bring the person back. I mean, there's instances of people being clinically dead for 8 minutes before they manage to resuscitate them. So and their memories are still there. So they last for a little while.
Now that you put it in that way, it does make sense. The electrical impulses, so very sophisticated recording device. The way that I look at it. So, well, there's that. Just, I was just thinking about that because this movie. One good thing about this movie is the fact that it made me question, all throughout in a couple specific places. One question that I had also when I was watching this movie is, that there is a limit to the human body, and I wonder, in the case of the, body snatching alien, when he was taking over the different bodies, and I started noticing this. I think it's after he took over the body of the stripper. Is, obviously humans could not go through this. This is obvious from the very get-go on the scene that we saw at the beginning of the movie where the guy just walked out of the car. Obviously he was shot. Although it wasn't visually apparent, he was shot a lot because there was a lot of cops and there was a lot of guns, and they were all going off at the same time. So I always thought, there is a limit as to what the body can handle before it drops. Obviously, one bullet should be enough in a specific location to drop a person. It's obvious this guy.
There are also indicators that there are also external influences that can push the body beyond its expected limits.
Yeah, and we see this from cases when we discuss, soldiers in the battlefield. One of the things that I noticed too could be adrenaline. Someone could be all shot up and normally would be down, and they're just shooting because of adrenaline. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. That there's so many different variances on the human body that would keep it going. It seems extreme from the human body when you watch this movie. Obviously, it's not real, but it makes me wonder what type of power the alien, the body snatching alien, would have to have on that human body to keep it upright enough to be able to move to another body. It's obvious that they can't be there once the body is damaged. They have to move on. I think that maybe because the tremendous energy that they have to exert to keep that body, it makes them want to leave and go into another body.
Mhm.
But that's one question that I was one question that I was mulling over when I was watching is like, what is it this alien is able to do to the human body that would keep it long enough so he can find another. And also obvious there is a limit because in some of the instances in this movie we see how the body has no other choice and it drops, and then someone comes over and that's when they we could see this, for example, a perfect example with the when the stripper was dropped, well, not dropped, she fell out of a building.
She dropped
She
herself.
actually jumped.
Yeah, so that's not going to be there's going to be broken bones. There's going to be a lot. You can't lift anything with broken bones. So it's obvious the alien had to be there. And a dog came in, and the alien, opened the stripper's eyes and moved on to the dog. So it's obvious there are limits, obviously. But I was very curious, and I don't know what you guys thought when if it bothered you as much as it did to me. What kind of power that alien had that could keep this body going for longer than it should be.
Well, it's more a case of things that take you out is like shock. All sorts of different types of shock, but basically, the intense pain, hydrostatic shock from the bullets entering your body, and all sorts of shocks that will shut down your nervous system to try and protect itself. So more than just the physical damage, it's the shock that will, depending on what sort of a person you are, some people can handle a lot more shocks than others. And some people will faint at the sight of blood or pass out if they spider, whereas other people, can be shot full of holes and they have the will to keep going and don't let their body shut down. So that there's that variance within the normal human population. But obviously the alien is getting all that information secondhand from the person they're inhabiting. So they're not, as long as they're not wearing a bullet, then the vessel wearing a bullet is like, yeah, well, I can keep it up because I'm not letting it go into shock because I'm the one controlling things, not it anymore.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, once the slime is taking over, things like personality traits are just on a second plane. Are not playing what rules the biology in the body really.
Yeah, and we see that alien is very complex from the very first scene in the hospital when he takes over the old man's next door, in the bed next to him, where there's a lot of tentacles and there's a lot of stuff. So it is very believable that this alien can tap into every part of the the system, the system of the body, and take control over every single aspect of it, including circulation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, some stuff that I was reading, they were talking about nerve damage being the key factor in stopping the body from moving. If you can take bullets into muscles and stuff and it'll destroy some fibers, but your muscles can still function as long as the bullet's not physically stopping them from moving, and you don't bleed out. But the moment you take nerve damage, the messages don't get to the muscles anymore, so they can't move. And taking damage to your muscles gives feedback to your brain, which causes it to go into shock.
That's why you had to hit the titans on the back of the head.
Yeah, and that's when you pass out. So basically, if the alien is getting all those tentacles into the different parts of the body to control it directly, thereby bypassing the human nerves. If the human nerves get shot up, it doesn't matter at all, as long as the alien tentacles are still functioning. So
Yeah.
that's why it can stay up.
Awesome.
Not really.
Well, yeah.
Creepy as fuck.
Yes. Oh, yes. That was a creepy scene. So, should we talk about?
I'm not ready to come out yet.
Oh man, maybe we should have.
And when a beautiful stripper says that, you go, yeah.
No, I don't want to kiss that.
So, in this movie, we get to see, like we spoke earlier, we get to see Claudia Christian. I see what you did there, Ray. You know, a little hint to it, like Babylon 5. Okay, so what can we? I think there's two things that Claudia was coined saying about this film, and one of those things she carried out through her career in film. The first thing that she said, which I wonder what your thoughts are, and then we'll move on to the second thing. When she was going to play Brenda the stripper, they designed her wardrobe for this scene, and producers found that her breasts, they were visually inadequate, so they designed the wardrobe to around her buttocks. That, when I heard that, it's sad that this happens. I don't know how frequent it would happen nowadays, because obviously this was in '87. But this must be a very damaging thing to your self-esteem. As any person, female or male, I found that to be hard to hear. Yet I see how this could happen in the film industry, because you are looking for something specific for the film, and I can understand their side as well, but I still find it very hard as a person to be told something like that. Have you heard this before? And if what is your thought of that? I found it very harsh, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Have you heard it?
Well, the 80s were far less PC than
Yes.
2022. And women's bodies were really, like
Objectify.
utterly objectified. And it was just a case of, guys would sit around drinking beer and rating the women at the bar. That was just what was done, and it's disgusting.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is imagine women sitting around rating you to know how bad that would feel.
Exactly.
It's not something you do to somebody that you intend to form a caring relationship with.
Whoa.
Like meeting somebody.
It kind of happens today, but with status. They sit around and they check out our status, and that's how we are more attractive or not.
How much do you earn?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it comes back the other way as well. But,
What you own.
yeah, but
your credit score.
it is a form of objectifying people if you're rating them against other people.
Yeah.
And it's unpleasant for whoever's being objectified, because
that's one of my
basically
favorite quotes is that comparison is a killer of joy.
Exactly. But you're basically being judged as whether you're worthy or not based on some physical criteria which other people have decided means if you tick that box, you are worthy, or if you don't tick that box, you're unworthy. And life isn't like that. People aren't worthy or unworthy for one specific or a number of specific things. And being told that something that, well, I'm not a woman, obviously. So I can't say from a personal perspective, but from what I've seen over time, I feel that a lot of women, especially the ones who are not ample in the bust area, probably do feel very conscious and very self-conscious about that. And it's sad that that society pushes them to feel that way. That, the whole point of humanity being variable is because tastes are variable. You don't have to be what is generally accepted to be accepted by any particular individual. Everybody's tastes are different. I'm not a big bust man. I don't particularly like massive boobs because I know how much they hurt the women who have to live with them.
The back, I feel it.
Back pain.
Back pain. Yes.
And the whole thing is, there's a lot of, here I go going back to anime because I watch a lot of anime, but a lot of women in anime are all about I haven't got as big a boobs as her, or my boobs are too small, or I don't measure up. And the whole thing is, the moment that you have children, they get bigger anyway. So if you start out with ones that are on the larger side and are starting to hurt your back, you wait until you have kids, then you're going to have a really sore back. So why? There's an old saying, any more than a handful is a waste, and I prescribe to it because, if it's more than a handful, you can't get your hand around it anyway. But, and that does sound very sexist, but it's a case of if you have more than a handful before children, you're going to have way more than a handful after children, and your back is going to be sore. So if any women are listening to this and they're worried about their bust size, don't. You are the way you are because humanity has variation, and different people like different things. So there's always someone out there who will like you the way you are. I don't think you have to change yourself.
More interesting to add to that.
I have two daughters.
Discussed with Robert.
Actually. I'm sorry?
That I have something more interesting that I think I have discussed with you in the past about like the prowess of a woman. And I think that 80 to 90% of a prowess of a woman is in their confidence. A woman can have no butt or not bust, and still, if they are secure and they feel hot, regardless of what whoever society is to tell them, that's gonna make her sexier than a woman with a big ass and a big bust. So I mean, the self-confidence is the biggest element on how hot you are really.
And that's not just women; that's men too.
Yes. Yeah, not just women, but I mean, that's my experience. Like, I have seen women that don't have none of them, and because of their attitude and how secure they are on their self-esteem, they're hotter than any woman that has bigger in any side. So to me, by experience and by perception, that's where really sexuality and how sexy somebody can be lies. It's not in your looks; it's in how good you feel about yourself. Regardless.
Yeah, I always feel, and I feel very strong about this. I don't know if it disqualifies me, but I have two daughters, and I have actually tried to manage what society's perception dictates of what that should be. So it's a battle that I had in my life because I don't want my daughters to grow up feeling any negativity. But I always say it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter who you are. You are beautiful the way you are. You are.
You're amazing.
No, but I mean, I know there's so many songs, and this is very true. You are beautiful the way you are. There's always someone there for you. Just because someone rejected you, that just means that person wasn't for you. That person. And if you force it, that's when we come into the places where
that's
in some cases
you try to our own self-confidence too. because
Exactly.
we're diminishing ourselves to fit somebody's liking instead of being our best exponential self.
Yeah, you don't want to let society dictate what you should be. You should be what you should be because you're beautiful the way you are.
That's why I
And
say
that's
weird and proud.
Well,
yeah,
the whole thing comes down to it. You're at your most attractive when you're happy in your own skin.
Yeah.
mhm,
And that is when you will meet the person who will find you right for them, and you'll create that wonderful thing. Trying to change yourself to be accepted by other people is a self-defeating activity
yes.
in a big way. And it
You will end
I
up
feel
that
sorry
way
for
yourself.
I feel sorry for teenagers because they all fall into those traps
Yeah.
that the mass media and advertising push on them, and it takes decades to understand this shit. And by the time you've worked it out, it's often a bit late. But
Yeah.
I mean, just be yourself, be your best self, and don't worry. The whole thing about love is that when you're young, you think you fall in love with somebody and you're so in love with them, and if you get turned
We
down by them,
confuse
it's the end
love
of the
with
world.
infatuation.
Yeah, exactly. But if you get turned down by them, it's the end of the world.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is that one person is not the entire world. There's billions of people out there. You could meet one a second for the rest of your life and never meet all of them. So when they say there's plenty of fish in the sea, they're not kidding.
Yeah.
But what you need to do is go and find your tribe. You need to go out and find people who are like you, that are interested in the same things, and then be your best self and meet. Then you're in your best situation to meet that someone who clicks with you, and then you'll be happy with them for the rest of your life. Don't think that one person that you've fallen in love with or become infatuated with, depending on which way you're swinging, is the only option for you for the rest of your life. Because a lot of people, if they feel that way, then they won't tell that person how they feel. They'll
It's like
just
holding
hold.
a stance, man. The more you try to grasp, the more it escapes your fingers.
But you're much better off. Oh, I find that person interesting. Before I get too attached, I'm going to tell them I find them interesting, and if it doesn't work out, I'm going to move on.
Yeah.
Don't wait until you're so crazy over somebody that they're your entire world, and they're what you've got to have, or your world will cease to exist, because you're only doing yourself a disservice. If you find somebody interesting, tell them. And if they find you interesting, you can build something together rather than building something on your own and then having it ridiculously one-sided. Don't hold back. Tell people you like them. If they don't like you, move on. Don't build up something for them and then wreck yourself over something that's not going to happen.
I always say also, and I find myself telling this mainly to my daughters, also to a couple of friends that I talk to in conversations. Um, don't, and even I think I even have told this. I don't know if I told this to Gio.
Probably.
I have told this to my wife. And basically, the sentence is: don't let anyone or anything dictates how you feel. It's they're not vested in your emotional growth. You are. So it makes me, and again, I said maybe because I have two daughters, and I feel their pain. But I am I'm very strong in that sentiment when I tell you, and I think I have put that into practice in my own life as well. Gio, you remember me telling you this? I think I
Yeah.
have told everyone at one point of another, because I strongly feel this is true.
I mean, you and I have had a lot of personal talks about my life and your life, so I'm certain that you have, or at some point or not. Yeah, most definitely. And that's something that I like. You made a good point that I wanted to also bring to Ray. Like, even though you're not a woman, you're somebody's father, or you're somebody's brother, or somebody's son. And that, if you're conscientious enough, it helps you also tap into what their life is, to understand and be conscious of these things, which most people are not. That's That's what I'm saying. Like, this is a space where I get to see folks like you that actually meet with me on the same place. We put our minds to things that are outside of us, and we make conscious about it. We think about these things, even though are not about ourselves, because in some way it taps into our lives, and our lives is not just ourselves at the end of the day. If not everybody that surrounds it, that matters to us, one way or another. You know.
Yeah. So
And
I'm
another
sorry.
anecdote,
Go
just
ahead.
before we move on, one more anecdote is people admire you for your strengths, but they love you for your flaws.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind.
Vulnerability.
Try not to always be perfect, because people will admire you, but they won't love you. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's like being want to be loved because they fear you, not because they understand your weakness. You know, don't be a tyrant.
So I feel like I need to apologize.
Why?
I brought the conversation really serious.
Hey, this is part of derailing. Woo!
But it's a good topic. It's a good topic.
It's
The
a
Sci-Fi remnant love connection.
Yeah. So the other,
book matters.
the other thing that we were talking about that Claudia Christian mentioned about filming this movie, it has to do with that scene at the rooftop. Well, not sure exactly. Let me pull back from that. Any
That's
scene
what she said.
that she was shooting, because I can't really recall which particular scene we're talking about, but it relates to any scene that she was shooting back at the at Lloyd and back. And one of those scenes, the exploding material from the prop gun scratched her cornea painfully.
Oh, ow.
So, if you are a Babylon 5 fan, which I am really curious because I haven't seen it, but I'm going to look for it. But for all of you Babylon 5, I want you to tell me if you can notice, because she says that whenever she fires a prop gun on the set of Babylon 5, you could see her turn her face away when pulling the trigger. And this is a reaction. It's kind of like a tick that developed from that trauma.
Yeah.
So if you watch Babylon 5, if you noticed, let me know. If you haven't noticed, watch her in the episodes again and let me know. Because I'm actually really curious. She said that she took this through her entire acting career. So it's not isolated to Babylon 5, but at any scene where you see her shooting a gun, you'll see her turning away. Have you noticed? This is something very like you would have to kind of be looking at to actually notice. Do you recall that, Ray, from watching Babylon 5?
No, I hadn't watched it specifically for that sort of detail. I mean, a lot of people are quite it's not necessarily like shrapnel from firing the gun, but more the sound. People sort of turn away from the bang. It's sort of like it scares them, so they sort of unconsciously jerk away. But no, I hadn't really noticed that. But it's probably really obvious once you're looking for it.
Yeah. I just found that to be really interesting. How you could take a trauma. Well, unfortunately, I hope that she hasn't taken trauma from the first out of the two that we mentioned. I hope not. But it's interesting to me how this was the one trauma that carried with her throughout her career. So it's really interesting to me. So there you go. I waited this long to tell you that.
You're gonna have Ray rewatching Babylon 5 and pushing the more for us to watch it. Where is it streaming by any chance?
That's a very good question. This show is so good that I might end up just buying it. You know.
You see, I'm in the land down under, so I'm actually finding out where it's streaming here, which is probably completely
different from here.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, VPN service. We should have a VPN service to actually sponsor us, so we can let them know that they can use this service of VPN, so we can use land down under.
Well, VPN services. Take note. You heard from Captain Chaos himself.
Yeah, a good idea.
According to this, the only place in Australia where you can stream Babylon 5 is Apple TV.
Oh, I see. The only I mean, you can buy it from Apple TV here, but as the time of this recording, the one place you can stream it if you have a subscription is HBO Max.
We can watch it.
Yeah. No, I definitely I'm gonna have to watch it. I told you I want to have an episode soon. And I don't know how soon is soon because how many seasons we have? 5. So that's
not surprisingly. There's a 5 on the title and there's 5 seasons.
So yeah, I'm definitely gonna watch it. I was trying to explain to my wife, and the only thing that I can say is it's kind of like Star Trek ish, but not. So
not that long.
Yeah. Am I right in my statement, Ray? Or do you have a better description? I know. I know. Oh,
it's hard to pigeonhole it. It's kind of its own thing.
Definitely.
It's massive space opera. And it's got its own twists and turns and its own technological sort of idiosyncrasies.
I see Star Trek, I see Star Wars, I see Battlestar Galactica in it. I see a little bit of everything.
It's way darker than Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
If they ever had got around to creating that Section 31 series, it'd probably be on the same level as this.
Looking forward to that.
I mean, the background of the whole thing is there's this big war between the Earth and a bunch of aliens called the Minbari, and basically the Minbari had been in space for thousands of years, and the humans hadn't. So they had much better tech, and they were just kicking the humans' ass. And they got all the way back to Earth, and they were about to invade Earth, and they were going to glass the planet because they weren't very friendly to the humans at the time. And then they just stopped and went away. And that's one of the mysteries. Like, why? Why did you had us on the ropes? Why did you give up? And the reason that Babylon 5 was created, it was an extraterritorial space station, quite a huge one. It's actually got a rotating section in the middle where it's got like sort of like one of those rotating space stations where it's got an internal surface and you can stand on it, like very, very large, and many football fields in size. And basically it was designed as sort of a United Nations of space where any species could come and interact with all the other species and get to know them and sort of like do deals, like trade deals and all that sort of stuff. So it was built by Earth, but it was run by humans, but it was extraterritorial. So it wasn't under the laws of Earth. It was a sort of combined thing. So that made it complicated as well. But, because it was an extraterritorial space, all these sorts of unusual things were going on with alien races. And it actually reminds me of, what was that Star Trek series with the space station?
Cultural stuff.
A little bit of Orville, but of course Orville came way after this, but more like Deep Space Nine. It had Deep Space Nine vibe. It didn't have the Next Gen vibe, but it had the Deep Space Nine vibe. So, there's this big shadow war going on between this ancient race, the Shadows, and there's one other race, that's the ancient race that survived till till that time. I can't remember the name of them, but basically they were working against each other, and the shadows were trying to come back, and all this sort of stuff was going on. It's cool. It's well worth the watch. I will say that the acting's a little bit wooden in the first season. So if you can just plow through that, get into the second season, it gets really, really good. So.
Awesome. Okay, so to get back to this movie.
What were we talking about again?
Well, these aliens were really hidden, so we couldn't see them. So
They were.
yeah,
The shadows certainly were. Yeah.
Put it on
You look more like COVID-19.
So, Gio, what is your thought on this? And again, I'm picking on you because me and you are the only ones newbie to this. Just so you know, at time of the recording, is my first time watching this today. So what is your thought on this movie? If you have any thoughts on the actual movie, since it's your first time.
I mean, I think that the movie taps into what goes beyond our humanity, which we are really capable of. If you think of, we have those exceptions we call psychopaths or whatever that can excel what we expect of a human being. So here you can see that played out, and I mean, it's not impossible for a human to actually depict these traits, if you think of it. In one way or another, you have them happening in society. And here they played out perfectly. And at the same time, it plays out also in what we expect society to be versus what it really is.
Yeah. I think, and I'm going to move on to
So it's a very
Ray.
thought-provoking movie to think
Yeah.
about.
Oh yes, definitely. I'm going to move on to Ray after I say my piece. By the way, this movie gives me Alien Nation vibes. I don't know if you're familiar with Alien Nation. But I would have to echo Gio in saying very thought provocative. And I think one of the reasons why I love this movie as much as I do is the fact that I love when movies mix genres. Obviously there's a various balance between when you watch certain movies, but it's very welcome to me when you have genres. This is your body cop type movie mixed with sci-fi, mixed with technically sci-fi. IMDb calls this a sci-fi horror. So you have, in my opinion, you have elements of horror, sci-fi, body cop type elements into a well thought out, thought-provoking movie, and I really, really enjoy that. I'm still not sure why I feel the way that I feel about the ending, though. Typically, this is not an ending that I would call a good ending. If you know from previous episodes what my taste is in endings. But I like the ending, and it makes me question myself, which again is what this movie does well, is a thought-provoking movie. Ray, what is your thought on this one? And you probably have a more robust, because you've seen it so many times.
Well, not deliberately. Like I didn't sit there. I'll go watch that again. No, except for this time when I was watching it for the show. But yeah, I first saw it in '89, and then every 5 or 10 years it would just pop up somewhere. I go, I know this movie. I'll watch it again. I vaguely remember it. Oh yeah, now I remember it. Oh, yeah. This is a cop. No, it's not a cop movie. Oh no, it's sci-fi. Oh, that's all right. But it's sort of that reaction. It's like, 80s cop movie. And look, it is the epitome of 80s, from that terrible dress that the woman's wearing when she comes into the music store that's sort of half tutu but pushed down. It's so 80s. It's and the bad CRT television in the diner with the bad reception. It's like, that is so 80s. And the cars, they were so 80s, and the guys snorting cocaine while he's doing a deal for the
There's
car.
a Miami Vice episode there.
Yeah, but this is SoCal, so it's LA.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, it was so 80s, so 80s. If you lived through the 80s, you're probably cringing at certain parts of the movie, and if you didn't, you're sort of there scratching your head going, is this real?
Well,
Did they make this shit up?
Not me. I want my 80s back. I love the big hair.
Parts of the 80s, like the music, I really appreciated, but some other parts of the 80s I can just do without. But yeah, it's sort of like watching Stranger Things. Have you watched that show?
Oh yes.
Where we had that Tupperware. That was in our fridge in the 80s.
Oh man.
That whole things pop out of your brain. You go,
I used to play D&D.
Yeah, the D&D too.
Yeah, D&D
Wow.
3.5. Yeah. I actually still have the red box set, the original advanced D&D box set. I still have the orange dice that you had to color in with the crayons to be able to see the numbers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sad. Okay. Anyway, moving on. So this movie, besides being a sci-fi hidden in a buddy cop drama wrapper, it does have Invasion of the Body Snatchers vibes. If you're into 50s sci-fi and you appreciate Invasion of the Body Snatchers, then this, is in that vein. So you may well appreciate it. It also, I've mentioned before that Sci-Fi had I won't say Monster of the Week. That's a role-playing game. Genre of the week in sci-fi, although it was genre of the year or genre of a number of years, where you'd get movies that had the same sort of aesthetic, but they weren't quite copies of each other. They were different enough to not be considered copies, but they were definitely in the same lane. And the one that I always think of when I think of the hidden is I Come in Peace, 1990, with Dolph Lundgren as one of the main actors. And I might be able to convince you to do that one in another episode, because we haven't done it yet. But basically that one is about a cop, who's trying to break up a bunch of drug dealers, and he discovers that there's an alien drug dealer who's using humans to create, what he's doing is shooting up with massive amounts of cocaine, and as they're foaming at the mouth and dying, they produce a huge amount of endorphins, and he's sucking that out of their heads because alien drug dealers deal in human endorphins.
Wow.
So there you go.
Interesting. I want to watch that.
And the big line is when the alien drug dealer guy, once he's been cornered, goes, he goes, "I come in peace." It's about the only thing he said. and the cop pulls the gun out and goes, "You go in pieces." It was a line reminiscent of all the Arnie movies with the one-liners. So
now
it's worth a watch.
I have to ask the question of the year. Is the ending a type of ending I would like?
Yeah, probably.
It was in pieces, man. You gotta watch that shit.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it wasn't as dark as the last few movies we've put you through.
That's what it sounds like.
Not nearly as bad as the
so it might be good.
Runners.
It's a little endorphins, Robert, so you might like it.
At the end of Cyberpunk, Edge Runners kick the shit out of me. Oh. Nasty, eh? Harsh realm. But yeah, no. So yeah, there was sort of this vibe of these sort of cop story with an alien involved thing going on, and these two movies remind me of it around the late 80s. So yeah, I Come in Peace and this movie were in the same lane, basically.
Ramos like the host.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And we're still waiting for part 2, Gio.
Yeah, we are. Have you watched the host, Ray?
The Host. I actually have it, but I haven't actually stopped to watch it yet. It's Doc Joe, one of his favorite movies. So
Man,
I
we've
read the
done it,
book.
but I mean, I don't mind if
Well-
we do it.
Well, it's on season 1. If you haven't picked it up, and go down to our backlog and download it. We actually, I don't remember. Do you read the book? I read the book.
I read the audiobook.
And is amazing. And then I remember when they announced the movie, I was so excited to watch it, and I love that movie. And they kept on announcing there was going to be a part 2 to the book, and it's now 2022, and we still have no part 2 to the book. So yeah,
Stephanie
it's a
Meyer,
story that
what
I
are you
want.
waiting for?
Huh?
Stephanie Meyer, what are you waiting for? I know she's
Yeah.
a listener.
this is the 2013 movie, The Host.
Yeah, it's
Sci-fi romance. Ooh.
yeah.
It's good.
It's a really, and don't let that romance fool you. Gio doesn't quite like overly romantic movies, and he loved this movie.
Yeah.
So it's I guess it's just part of the recipe, but it's not the whole recipe of the movie.
It's not the nucleus of the movie. Not at all.
Mhm.
That's just the premise, if you think of it.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, I recommend you watch it, then listen to our episode, and let's revisit that conversation, because that was an
That
awesome
movie's
movie,
good.
and it was an awesome book.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I found it interesting that you haven't heard of that. She actually did.
That's definitely a body snatcher alien element.
Yeah, it's basically body snatching. Yeah, kind of like this movie.
Well, it's happy endings because they snatch the body, but they don't compromise completely. They cannot leave, and the person would leave on.
Yeah. So
the
the
body
premise is
snatcher Disney ending robbers like movie.
yeah.
Yeah, well, in The Hidden, when Beck asks Gallagher, "Is he dead?" When he's been taken over by the alien, he just nodded. So anybody that Sluggy, the alien, took over was basically dead as soon as he was taken over. Probably because of those tentacles damaging the body to the point where once he left, the body would just go and be dead.
Yeah, and as a contrast, just to give you a little contrast on the host, for example, and what I find to be very interesting about that story is that the body snatching entity has to learn to live with the consciousness in the body.
So the
So
person
that I
steals
find
there.
that very interesting. I'm sorry.
So the person steals there.
So there's a constant battle between the two entities, which I find very, very interesting. So, yeah, that's my thought. But if you haven't heard watched that movie, I would recommend you go pick it up, watch it, then download our episode, because I'm really curious to see what you guys think about that movie, which I
He's
found to
talking
be
to
one of
me
my
too.
yes. So, any final thoughts before we move on to the next segment?
No, we go in peace.
Well, my final thought is, if you like movies that appear to be a normal genre but have sci-fi elements sort of weaved into them very delicately, so that it takes you a little while to cotton onto what's happening, like that discovery thing, like that. Oh, what the hell? What was that? That's weird. Okay, something's going on here. I've got to work out what it is. If you like that sort of watcher investigation feeling, then you'll love this movie, because it's And really, if you've listened to this whole podcast, we'll spoil the shit out of everything, which we always do. So but hopefully you when you watched it, I'll put it into past tense. You enjoyed that element because
I really enjoy that. I really enjoy that feeling of it's kind of like they sneak it into the storyline, and you're like you weren't really expecting it, especially when he pulls up. It became real when he pulls up that gun. That's when it became real. I mean, you already knew what was going on, but when he pulled that gun, that shiny little weird rounded gun, it was like, oh, okay, this is definitely sci-fi now.
This is weird for sure.
Yeah, it's real. Any final thoughts, Gio, on the movie?
No, man. I think I play it out on what I think of the whole movie. I think that is a must watch. I second you on that. Like, it's a movie that you're watching it, and until quite some good minutes into it, you don't realize it's a real sci-fi. So it's a good movie because it kind of sucker punch you. And that's a good feeling when the movie gets to actually shake you out of your shit, out of your seat, then out of your shit too. You're like, whoa, what's happening here?
Awesome. Okay, so we can move on to the next segment.
The science in sci-fi.
Oh boy.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, you were thinking about it so hard. You went off and did some research.
Hey, man, you're a biologist, man. Go nuts.
Well, let's just say, besides the little shiny gun thingy, this movie really didn't have any tech in it that wasn't 80s related. So there wasn't much here that we could sort of say, oh, this is something sciencey that somebody dreamt up and it's become real in the meantime. Because there has been, decades gone past since this movie came out, so there would have been plenty of time for it to happen. It just wasn't there in the first place. So more than having something seen in this movie that's now become part of our lives, or people are working on it, this is more like a showcase of what the 80s was like, and you can sort of see how things have improved. I mean, I was there in the 80s, and my memories don't really hold all the detail of what the technology was like, because it's been moving forward and changing so slowly for me as, somebody living through all of that. I'm sitting here in front of 3 screens. One of them's a big flat curved screen with, it's I think it's it's equivalent of a 3K screen. I've got two windows opened up side by side. I've got the HD camera going, the microphone up here. I've got a smartphone over here charging on a charging pad. It's not connected. It's wirelessly charging. I've got Bluetooth headphones on. And this is all normal. This is completely 2022 normal. Well, it's probably like 2020 normal. I haven't bought anything new in a while. But what you don't understand until you watch an old movie like this, that technology has changed so much. And, when you watch this movie, my mind is taken back to that time and go, oh, yeah, CRT screens were a thing, weren't they? And they were massive. They were really deep. And oftentimes, we have digital TV now. Oftentimes you get it through the internet. So it's either buffering or you've got it. There's no bad reception. But when they were watching the news on the TV in the diner, the reception was terrible. It was wavy lines in it. And it was 480p, which is crap compared to what we're used to these days with full HD and 4K and above. And you just forget how things have changed. You forget how basic things were in technology compared to what they are like now. And obviously, possibly half or even more of the people listening to this podcast that didn't experience that. They never knew what it was like before. They they understand how their technology is changing, but not how it changed before they were born. And I'm the same. I don't understand how technology changed up until, when I started becoming aware of it in the 70s. So, yeah, I mean, technology is always changing. It doesn't feel like it because it happens so slowly, but it is. And depending on how far you look back, you go, wow, things have really changed. But then there's these anomalies. Like in 1901, they had this race for cars, in inverted commas, cars, which were pretty basic back then. Some of them were steered by a handle rather than a steering wheel. They had no windscreens, no seat belts. You're lucky to have a seat. But more than 50% of the cars in this race were electric.
Yeah.
In 1901. And you look at that and you go, what? That doesn't make sense. I mean, everybody knows that cars have been petrol since the year dot when they were invented. No, they haven't. There was steam-powered cars or electric-powered cars, and there were petrol-powered cars, and the petrol ones won out. Basically because of the strength of the petroleum companies who wanted their technology to become prevalent so that they would make the most money. And money talks, and things were legislated against, and electric cars were shelved. Steam cars were shelved because they weren't nearly as competitive. But electric cars went bye-bye for a long time because of the power of the petroleum companies.
I want a steam power car.
Do you? But you've got to be tending the coal in the little burner all the time. It's a pain in the butt. I actually want a mana-powered car from Another World with my smartphone. They sound really cool.
Nice.
But that's not technology we have in this universe. I would like to introduce it to this universe. That would be cool. But I mean, technology. When you look back at technology, you see how it's progressed from where you remember it, and you've forgotten that you remembered it, up until today. But then there's these anomalies. Like, I couldn't believe it when I read the thing. More than 50% of the cars in this race in 1901 were electrically powered, and I'm like, what? I mean, sure, they didn't have the range that they needed to be, truly competitive against petrol-powered cars, but they were there. They were working on it way back then. So, I mean, a lot of these technologies come about, but they're not evolved enough to be competitive against what is available. And also, a lot of technologies come up which are then bought by the predominant technology companies and shelved. So there's a lot of technologies that would compete quite successfully against what is current, but the people who are making the money off the current technology don't want that competition, so they buy it up early on. They throw money at it to take it off the market, and they shelve it so that you will keep buying their stuff because there's no alternative. And this happens quite a bit. So keep that in mind. If you're inventing anything, don't let the allure of money from what would be your future competitor take you off the market, because humanity needs as much competing technology as it can get so that we as a species can create a better world, rather than just let something that has been there for a while stay there because some rich asshole's making money out of it.
Yeah, the importance of innovation and how the market always fluctuates and keeps you going through keeping alive a dying technology instead of pricing to innovation.
Yep,
which is evolving.
Exactly.
It kind of what's happening with electric cars and fuel combusted engines right now. People are trying to down talk what electric cars, how good they can be, but it's because they want to keep on going the economy on a dying and a finite resource, which is gas. That's going to end.
And a polluting resource.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you guys are aware, but in 2006, there was a documentary, and the title is called Who Killed the Electric Car? And I don't know if you guys seen it, but it's a must watch. Tom Hanks is in it. And it is a really interesting documentary because obviously now we have electric cars everywhere. But back then, and I don't know if this movie, I like to think that this documentary played into helping electric cars come into play, because it actually brought to light some of the things that prior to that point didn't allow electric cars to come to the market. So I just wanted to point it out. It's not something that we could cover in this episode, but it's a really good watch if you're interested to see. And I remember back then how I thought, okay, electric cars are really cool. It's a shame we'll never see it. And today now I have one, and I'm loving it. So it's an interesting watch to see how that technology took us a 360-degree turn, and now we come from a point where I myself was thinking we'll never see that, to now owning a car myself. So it's really interesting.
Can I ask you a question, Robert?
Mhm.
Does your car have a ludicrous performance mode?
No, it was a discussion, me and my wife, prior to buying it, and I am a speed demon, so if I get that, I'll probably kill myself. So for health reasons, I decided not to get it.
For survival reasons?
For survival reasons, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough too. Yeah. You know, that's a reference to Spaceballs, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Ludicrous speed.
I guess Elon is a fan.
But hey,
I'd say so.
Robert told me that the Teslas are gonna have some feature now that they can have sound like an actual car.
Oh yes, the new ones. The new ones have a speaker now. So you could have it sound like a choo-choo train if you wanted to. Some people are actually, which I don't condone this, and please don't do this, but they have put like gunshots. So yeah, I seen all kinds of things on the speakers.
You could hack it and change the audio to the green sleeves thing from the ice cream truck. Ding 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 ding.
Well,
ding,
you don't need to
have all the kids following you.
You don't need to hack it. You can actually put that on, and I think I saw a video of a guy doing that. An ice cream truck as a horn. So yeah.
It's funny.
Interesting.
So that whole diatribe I just went off on was off the cuff, just right then. I'm such a bullshit artist. We're actually going to talk about the human body and what it can take, what sort of levels of damage it can take, but I couldn't find much about that.
That's okay.
We actually mentioned it earlier on, but there's this controversial concept called hydrostatic shock, which I mentioned to you in our pre-show, where it's that a penetrating projectile, such as a bullet, can produce a pressure wave that causes remote neural damage, subtle damage in neural tissues, and or rapid incapacitating effects in living targets. So, as I mentioned when we were talking before, it's not so much the bullet passing through your muscles that causes you a problem. It's more the hydrostatic shock damaging your nerves, or the bullet actually functionally breaking your nerves or your bones. So we're sort of talking about how the alien could keep the body standing when it's taken so much damage. And yeah, a lot of people can just pass out from looking at a spider. They go into shock that quickly, whereas other people can be much more hardy, and it's just they're one of those other variables of humans being all different. But yeah, I mean, theoretically, a person could take a lot of gunshots and keep going if they were lucky. If they the hydrostatic shock hadn't damaged their nerves particularly, or they were being winged rather than hitting the torso. There's a reason why I shoot for the center of mass, which is not just because it's the biggest bit and so it's easy to shoot. It's because that's where all the important bits are that keep you going, like the heart, the lungs, the brain, and all those sorts of things are in the center of mass. So if you put a hole in one of those, you're going to stop the person rather quickly. So, but yeah, hydrostatic shock, is it real? There's a lot of sort of papers out there and things that you can read about that. But yeah, nerve damage is apparently the biggest problem in that will take you down quicker than damage to muscles or other bits of your body that aren't super vital to keep you moving.
Mm-hmm.
But that's about all I've got, because there wasn't much in the way of future tech being thought up and inserted into this movie.
Awesome. Okay, so we have come to this point in the podcast where we thank you for being one more episode with us. We really, really, really hope that you enjoy this episode and that you come back for more for future episodes on this podcast. Just reach out. We love hearing from you. And if you have any other topic you want to discuss with any of us, or if you want to see something on a future episode, you can reach out. You can reach out to any of us and let us know what you think. And you can actually call our number too, the hotline which I mentioned at the beginning, and leave us a voicemail, and we'll be more than glad to play it on the episode. So thank you again for being with us, and we hope to see you soon.
Sayonara, bye-bye.